Hello, Woober Club players and fans, and welcome to the Week 7 featured match. We have a matchup this week between Joe of the Boulder Boldores, also known as Sasbo7, and we have Tony, also known as Tony DJ of the Mighty Miltanks. And this is the first time we're featuring Tony, so I'm excited to see how that battle turns out. And we got a lot of Pokemon that I really like using in Draft League on these teams. Celesteela is one of my all-time favorite Pokemon. Bronzong is another that I really love to use, and then obviously Pelipper is huge in general with bringing the rain and stuff like that. And so you see Torkoal on the other side, so maybe we can expect to see them fighting over that weather presence a little bit here, and so that'll be an interesting component of the battle as well. And then of course Weavile with triple axle, often people will prepare for that with lots more rocky helmets on their team than usual to give that thing a lot of chip damage. That and Urshifu Rapid Strike, both with those multi-hit contact moves. So I'm joined today by Zach, also known as hibradmajors of the Summit County Psyducks. So go ahead and say hello before we get started.
Hey, how's it going? Glad to be here.
Yeah. So do you have any thoughts about these teams before we jump into the match?
Yeah, I think both of them have a lot of really fun-looking mons. I think Weavile could do a lot of damage here. And I really like Dragonite as well. I've seen Steve in the past have a lot of success with it. So, I mean, if he can set that up, I think he'll be in good shape. Although he does have like a lot of rock type Pokemon on his side, so he has to be careful of that. But yeah, looks like a great match we got.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. It looks like on Tony's side we've got a little more offensive power right out of the gate, but Joe, between a pretty solid defensive presence and then the offensive Weavile and Jolteon, I think we're going to be in for a good one here. So with that said, let's get into it. 3, 2, 1, go. Alright, so the leads here are going to be Bing Bong, Bronzong, and Grimmsnarl. So Grimmsnarl obviously having the type advantage here, but Tony is not going to fear that. He's going to set up screens, and Bronzong is going to take advantage of that and go for Calm Mind, and then a second one as the second screen comes up. So
yeah, well, that's really interesting. I like that a lot. I mean, usually you expect to just see something like Stealth Rock or something like that, but I think setting up on this could be a threat, definitely. So this is going to be really cool to see. Oh, and the Meteor Beam as well.
Yeah, you'd think Torkoal would be a safe switch in there, but instead, this Bronzong is going to get another special attack boost and one-shot that Torkoal. So
through light screen, but I mean, that +3 special attack is going to do a lot.
Yeah, and this Fire-type Weather Ball is hardly doing anything, and meanwhile, it's going to return a Weather Ball of its own.
Oh my god.
Insanely hype.
I mean, this is pretty much just destroying the screens that Tony set up earlier. There's nothing he can really do with those anymore.
Now Tony's returning a Meteor Beam, which is funny. Unfortunately, not the best type matchup there. And that Weather Ball is not going to one-shot, but still going to do quite a chunk.
Okay, there we go. We see the Flamethrower. So I guess he was just trying to get the special attack boost for, Celesteela, but it didn't pay off in the end. Down to the Weather Ball, and we have, Bronzong already taking out 3 of his Pokemon.
Yeah, that burn, though, is going to put it on timer. However, Zoomer will come in and knock it off to finish it off, because not any added bulk on the defensive side there. So now in comes Jolteon. Obviously a good matchup for that thing. So it's going to switch out, predicting a switch in into Stonejourner here. So we'll see what that can do.
Yeah, I'm not really sure why exactly Stonejourner he brought in here. Let's see what he does. Okay, self-destruct. That was fun.
Yeah, thank you for coming out today, Stonejourner.
All right, well, I like seeing those kind of plays. He's kind of up, so he can afford to do some of those. But it looks like this Grimmsnarl is going to be pretty tough to take down. So let's see what happens.
It's got both screens back up again, and that Thunder Wave is not going to do anything to Weavile here, thanks to that dark typing. But yeah, it is going to be able to break through that last little bit of percent, but the screens are still here for one turn of this Dragonite to maybe get set up on a switch-in, perhaps.
All right, I'm interested. I'm interested as to why he switched out there. I think he should have just stayed in with Weavile because I mean it would have been just a free triple axle right there. Mm-hmm. Well, unless he was scarfed or something like that, of course.
Yeah.
But
yeah, hard to read what was going on there. And so now he's got 2 Dragon Dance boosts and is doing quite a chunk, but not enough to one-shot this Pelipper. So if he had Dragon Dance that turn instead, that would have been, I mean, a very potent Dragonite that we're dealing with here. So, but now it is able to finish off Pelipper. In comes Cradilly. I'm hoping to.
A lot of damage at that.
And another Meteor Beam.
But the miss. Finally we get a miss with Meteor Beam.
Man, that feels bad. And so now Joe is on the defensive because, I mean, if that was his only chance to one-shot that Dragonite, then it really hurts to miss on that. Yeah,
he really just should have stayed in with the Weavile, and I don't think he was choiced or anything like that because he used knockoff before. I'm pretty sure.
Interesting play here, though. Ice Shard coming out and able. I guess he did not click Extreme Speed because that would have gone first, and I'm curious if that would have.
Might have done it actually.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Play Rough takes out the Weavile.
So now it's 1-1. And Volt Switch is going to do it against that Azumarill. So very close game. Almost a comeback there.
What a great match. It was really one-sided from the start. But Tony was able to really turn the tables on him. And for the last second, it was a really fun game to watch.
Yeah. So, a little bit of, luck here and there, but ultimately Joe was able to hold on to that early lead and finish it off. And super close game between these two guys. And I loved seeing Bronzong put in work there at the beginning, and all the Meteor Beam. I mean, I never expect to see hardly one in a match, nonetheless 3,
right?
And then one unfortunate miss. So. A lot of fun moves out here, plus that self-destruct from Stonejourner as well. So, I think
it was pretty interesting seeing Cradily with Meteor Beam as well. I wasn't really expecting that out of all the rock moves that it gets.
Definitely.
So that was very interesting. I think it was a great match. I think only thing Joe probably could have done differently was just stick with Weavile when Tony put the Dragonite into play. I think that would have been the only difference, really. Maybe he didn't have triple axle or anything like that, but I mean, even with Ice Shard, he would have done a pretty good chunk.
Yeah, maybe he didn't have the axle and didn't want to risk not KOing with Ice Shard through the screens since they were still up at that point. So
right.
Yeah, hard to say, but good match there. And
I was kind of expecting weather to play a bigger part in this. Since Joe brought his Pelipper and Tony brought his Torkoal, but we didn't really end up seeing not a whole lot of Pokemon on Joe's side that can really take advantage of the rain like he usually brings, with Kingdra and the Urshifu as well. So
I did see those back-to-back weather balls though, which was
that was pretty fun. That was pretty fun.
Yeah, so more fun.
It was funny that. Really, I mean, it was Tony's weather that helped out Joe a lot because it gave Bronzong that fire type weather ball against a lot of his Pokemon.
Yeah, it helped it break through Celesteela, which might have been more difficult otherwise. So
definitely.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is gonna bring it to a close for this week's featured match. There is only one more week of the regular season, so we'll see if we can finish it off strong as we head into the playoffs. So. That said, we're going to send it over to the power rankings and see where everyone's at heading into the final week and see what people need to do to make a move for one of those coveted playoff buys this season. So thanks again for joining me, Zach, and we will throw it over to the rest of these guys. See you next time.
And welcome to the Power Rankings section of our Week 7 video. I am your host, as always, IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant, joined by my co-host, Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
How's it hanging?
And our guest for this week, who's been a regular on our top 4, it is Joey, coach of the Akron Aggrons. What's up, man?
Not much. Ready to keep winning, hopefully.
Yeah, well, we'll kind of see what happened. Of course, we get to go over his recap. You already know he's still in the top 4. We do have a little bit of a shakeup as we get into it. The numbers 1 and 2 teams have swapped. We've got your Seattle Steamrollers up at number 1, followed by the Newport Noctowls, Akron Aggrons, and Route 1 Birbs. Though even then, it was definitely not a clean week for, well, the 2 through 4 teams. We'll get into that in just a little bit. And actually, we're going to start off with 2 of our top teams facing off with each other. The Seattle Steamrollers and the Route 1 Birbs faced off. And considering that Chad moved up, I think we have a good idea of what exactly happened. But Steve, could you break down a little bit for us the result of this match?
Yeah. Chad and his Seattle Steamrollers brought a team of Chansey, Landorus Incarnate, Rillaboom, Volcanion, Volcarona, and Corviknight to face Michael and his Route 1 Birbs, bringing a team of Dragapult, Darmanitan, Keldeo, Umbreon, Mamoswine, and Gourgeist. And the Seattle Steamrollers were able to pull away with the 6-0 victory. Huge win for Chad. Throughout the battle, Chad displayed his usual excellent pivoting. In the first 15 turns alone, I could cite like 8 examples of just switching in and taking no damage or minimal damage or a status that didn't matter. Excellent pivoting, of course. As the battle progressed, Chad got a little lucky on turn 18 with the Rock Slide miss against Volcanion that may have turned the tide. It may not have, but it definitely would have chipped it quite a bit and may have changed the course of the battle. And that's kind of been the story of Michael and the Birbs. Bad luck in this match. RNG definitely didn't go his way, and honestly throughout the whole season. It'll be interesting to see if that persists through the playoffs and, through future seasons, or if eventually it'll turn around. Well, talking about Michael, I'd like to shout out the Gourgeist. The Frisk on it did a lot of work, reducing the prediction game Michael had to play, knowing from the beginning the Landorus is scarfed, knowing early on that the Rillaboom was banded. There's all these different Frisks really were key, and also was a huge defensive piece against those 2 monsters, Landorus and Rillaboom, really limiting their damage output until it eventually went down. And that was kind of the turn point at the mid-late game. Chad finally breaking through that Gourgeist around turn 30 with Rillaboom. And that's when things started going downhill for Fruit Taco. Another thing Chad has done is with all his defensive play, he kind of conditions his opponent to expect switches. So late in the game, the Birbs had Mamoswine out against Volcanion. Expecting to switch to Corviknight, the Birbs decided to set up Stealth Rock. However, Volcanion stayed in, had the rock set up against it, but was able to take the Mamoswine KO quite easily. And then defog away the Stealth Rocks on the next turn. So that kind of conditioning the expected switch, but changing it up, really paid off there for a KO that... outside of that, Chad played for the 6-0 at the end, and it ended up working for him. Was able to get that big win. However, do have to shout out the Birbs Dragapult, Grassy Seed, Dragon Dance, Dragapult. Really had a chance to do some work. There were definitely some walls. Chansey and Corviknight would have been a pain to get through. However, it didn't get a try as Rillaboom decided to crit. Another instance of bad luck for the Birbs. But all in all, very dominant performance from Chad. Very much deserved this 6-0 victory and is clearly the number 1 team at this point in time. Joey, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just another strong showing from Rillaboom. Always like to see it. Even against mons that are supposed to wall it like Gourgeist, it can still get in significant damage, as we saw in this battle.
And of course, that crit Woodhammer onto Dragapult was absolutely a big deal. I do want to take a moment to let some of my anti-Umbreon bias come out here too. Got a couple of interestingly nice wishes off, but otherwise just kind of let Chad go wild here. Chansey coming in on every Toxic, walling it just all the way back and forth. It didn't have knockoff, didn't have taunt, and it really can't fit enough support moves, so the proper support moves on there. And honestly, that just kind of seemed the window for Chad to get in his big hitters every time and allow him to break down everything else but the Umbreon in a little bit of last man standing syndrome, even in singles. But Chad, congratulations on 7-0. He's going for a perfect season next week. Pretty sure that's going to be our feature match, so definitely come back to see if he can make that happen. But for now, we're going to move on to our number 2 team, the Newport Noctowls. And as much as I'd love to talk about this one, I'm going to hand it over to Joey. Please tell us what happened to the Noctowls this week.
All right, so we had Elf Owls, the Newport Noctowls versus Nate's Buffalo Bouffalant. Elf Owls brought Sandslash, Alola, Barraskewda, Lantern, Tangrowth, Hydreigon, and Hatran. And Nate had brought Zeraora, Victini, Nidoking, Cobalion, Noivern, and Tangela. So earlier on in the battle, we had a strong showing from Heatran, dodging back-to-back Focus Blasts from Noivern, which helped it stick around a lot longer than it would have otherwise. However, this advantage didn't last for too long, and Elf Owls had an uphill battle for most of the time. He lost Lantern somewhat early on with help of a critical hit on the Focus Blast, making up for the 2 misses, which then allowed the follow-up Draco Meteor to knock Lantern out, which opened up Volt Switch on Zeraora and Cobalion, giving Nate a lot of momentum to play around with and always come out ahead on switches. Elf Owls himself did have some good reads on switches, such as several switches into immunities on Nidoking, but he could never really capitalize on them and often had his Mons get knocked out the following turn, either being slower than Nidoking or Nidoking having a substitute up to protect itself. One other note is for the entry hazards. Elf Owls came ahead slightly on that, being able to remove the rocks on his side while keeping up the rocks on Nate's side. But because he couldn't remove the heavy-duty boots from Zeraora and Victini until it wasn't really relevant, that advantage didn't go very far for him. So Nate, did you have any other comments on this battle?
Yeah, definitely. Those three pairs of boots on my team, I think, was a big deal. It seems like teams have been prioritizing rocks on me quite a bit, so I was pretty happy to just go with all the boots and not really care about those hazards nearly as much anyways, especially considering Cobalion, the giant resistance, Nidoking resist, and Tangela just being able to heal up anyways, and all 3 of the other members having boots. That definitely helped a lot, as you said, with the pivoting game too. Always nice to have Tangela back. Thank you, Steve. Definitely appreciate that one. I actually tried out something new with Helmet on there. I thought that was kind of cool. And I'm just overall happy to see my gameplay improving back to where my standards are. I had some pretty rough weeks in there, such that I'm probably going to be missing out on the bye. But there's also a chance I can climb back up to 500 before it's just too late, which I'm definitely proud of. Steve, you have anything else about this match before we finish things up?
For the Newport Noctowls, really, the key mon of the season, I believe, has been Heatran. And one of the key storylines with Heatran has been its inability to hit at key times. Elf Owls have been changing the name every week, maybe just for fun, maybe to try and make it hit more. But I got to say, this Hitran, really doing some work. Not only did it hit all of its moves, maybe limited by the fact that it only went for one move that doesn't have 100% accuracy, but hey, hit all of its moves. But as we also talked about, had the 2 dodges and switched in twice on immunities, taking advantage of Flash Fire and Steel typing. All in all, quite a good swing for Hitran here, and maybe Hitran will make a return in future weeks and bring that hitting energy into the future matches.
Sometimes we're creatures of superstition, and that carries over sometimes. Let's see if maybe that'll continue on. But the win streak for him is over, and that will leave Chad as our only undefeated team at this point in the season. And of course, we've saved probably the best for last. I think one of you might agree, one of you may disagree, because my 2 co-hosts here faced off in our last match that we're going over here, as Joey and the Akron Aggrons are number 3 team. And yes, these 2 did face off against each other. Joey brought a team of Kyurem, Crocodile, Sylveon, Arcanine, Seismitoad, and new addition, Cutiefly, against SteveChuck's Excadrill, Conkeldurr, Dracozolt, Togekiss, Tyranitar, and Gigalith, with double sand. He's really gone all in on the sand after all these trades. And Joey ended up taking the L 0-4, which brings him down to 5-2 overall in this season. Honestly, overall, this just looked like a pretty terrible matchup. We know Cutiefly had to come and tried to set up the webs, but those got shut down immediately, especially with the paralysis that came into effect there. Probably should have been swapping out on turn 2, maybe come back in a little bit later for the webs. Maybe he's going for a Stun Spore on that move, but 2 turns of paralysis really shut down anything that was going to try to do. I think maybe the biggest thing is that Cutie Fly was the only earthquake resistance against a team with Excadrill and Sylveon, and Cutie Fly were the only real switch-ins for Conkeldurr's fighting moves as well. And that was just a big deal. He just does not have the walls for those two, not to mention Dracozolt, not to mention there are 2 Sand Setters to get those 2 going. And I don't see the physical defense, or more importantly, the typing really, to be able to stand up to those. I think Paralysis was a big deal from the Togekiss, really spreading that around. Again, we mentioned the Cutie Fly, but also on the Sylveon a little bit later. That maybe had a chance to do quite a bit of work, but Paralysis stopped it pretty hard, as did the Dracozolt, admittedly, too, which could just outspeed and KO just about everything it wanted to, whenever it needed. I would like to give shout out to that Arcanine. I really liked the Sunny Day idea. As we saw, Flare Blitz in the sun, it did over half to that Togekiss, and I thought that was a pretty great idea. Just was not great to see it get parried so early by the Togekiss a little bit before that, and things kind of went downhill for it a little bit too much thanks to that Paralysis too. But a lot of great cleanup from Steve. We're seeing a big turnaround from him, and we're going to see if Joey can maybe pull things together a little bit here for the end. I know he still has one more one he's got to bring, but I think the Crocodile is an interesting idea, and I kind of like with the direction you're going with improving your team. So let's see what you can do when it comes time for playoffs. We're going to go over where you're at in those standings in a little bit. But Steve, what are your thoughts on this match and Joey's season overall so far?
Touching on his physical defense, he does have a Intimidate heavy team. I believe both Crocodile and Arcanine bringing it. It was just with Excadrill having Swords Dance that kind of the predicted switches there were able to overcome it. You mentioned the Sylveon, and I just want to say I was terrified when that started setting up behind the substitute. I didn't have an answer to it behind the substitute. Togekiss being able to paralyze it was huge. But otherwise, Dracozolt could come in and secure the KO, but behind the sub, that's nothing. So Dracozolt goes down. And the other Mons weren't really offensive enough to take advantage of it. So all in all, it was a great move, but Togekiss was able to paralyze it, and from there, was able to take it out. Also, in general, the RNG did tend to favor me, which was a nice change for me. But the 2 early paralyses on Cutiefly really helping out, and that kind of set the tempo of the battle. Joey, anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, I would agree that the paralysis was real annoying to deal with. As Nate had mentioned, I wanted to get Cutiefly out of there with a U-turn, but that didn't work, and I just kept trying. Should have just given up and switched it manually. For Earthquake resists, while I was team building, that's definitely something I overlooked, having only Cutiefly as an option. Another strong Earthquake resist I could have brought was Tornadus, but the heavy rock and electric presence on Steven's team made me not really wanting to do that. And offensively, Tornadus wouldn't do much aside from Conkeldurr, so I ultimately decided against it.
Yeah, I don't know. Tornadus has a good bit of utility, but there are just some matchups where it's pretty rough. I do know that a couple mods it really struggles against to do anything. Things it gets outsped by, especially electric types we see from this Dracozolt, does make it pretty tough. So I think I'd chalk a lot of it up to a matchup, but it's always good to see the brotherly rivalry coming into effect here a little bit. So that's going to do it for our top 4, and that means we've got to start talking about playoffs. Yeah, we go over top 4 specifically because the top 4 teams all get a first round bye in the playoffs. That's what we're really looking for, especially the number 1 seed overall, which is just a really nice accolade to acquire. I think the first 2 seasons of this regular draft format that we've done, I won the first one and Steve won the second one as far as number 1 seed, but we're both basically out of that contention right now. So we're going to go in a little more detail about where everyone is at right now, where everyone is at in the playoff picture, what they might need to do to secure that first round bye, and possible scenarios for that. So we're just going to start off at top with the Seattle Steamrollers, who are 7-0 with a plus 25 differential, and it's pretty simple for them. They can secure a first round bye and the number 1 seed overall if they just get a win over the Close Combat Club. However, they also can still lose and get it if the Newport Noctowls also lose, or they're also 5 points in differential ahead of the Noctowls. So long as their loss and the Noctowls win don't make up that differential point-wise, then they still make it as the number 1 team. Pretty nice season so far. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, Chad's had a great season. Overall, it seems pretty likely he'll be the number one. He doesn't have an easy road. The Close Combat Club, although they struggled early on, have really started putting together a season, and are contenders right now. So it's not an easy match, but just the favor there, as well as even if he loses, he still has someone else needs to win plus get differential on him. All in all, I very much think Chad's going to lock up this number one next week and have that number one seed and be the home team for all that it matters throughout the playoffs.
Boy,
Joey, anything else you'd like to add?
No, yeah, Chad has had a great season, and we'll see if he gets to get the 8-0 throughout the normal season.
And it is definitely because of that Rillaboom. So sorry, Joey, that I couldn't hang on to the Rillaboom for another season.
I decided to try something else this time.
And
look where it got me.
And you are
Not
getting
8-0.
punished. Exactly. So we're moving on to our number 2 team. The Newport Noctowls are 6-1 at +20. They do also have the first round bye clinched, and they're the other team that we're looking at to potentially get that number 1 seed. They need to win over the Zanesville Zigzagoons, and as mentioned before, we do need the Seattle Steamrollers to lose and overcome that 5-point differential between the two of them. I don't think this is terribly unlikely, honestly, and we may have a little bit of drama here for that number 1 seed. The Noctowls have been so good. Even their one loss was only a 2-0 here just this last week. What do you think, Steve?
Yes, I definitely would not count them out. Although I favor Chad, the Noctowls here just being able, going up against a team towards the bottom of the league right now, picking up that win is very much in the realm of the possibility. And it's quite possible it is by a larger margin, picking up that differential. So just needs a little bit of help from the Close Combat Club. And I very much believe with a little bit of help, the Newport Noctowls could be our regular season champion. Joey, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, I think the 2 top teams definitely could go either way. Yeah, that's all for me.
I think they've definitely been these 2 standout teams so far. Not to knock, of course, our number 3 team, who I love when my job is easy. Look at this. First round bye clinched. That's about all we're looking at for the Aggrons. You got the first round bye. Can't be too greedy now, I think. You can move up to the 2 spot or the 4 spot, but not in contention for the 1, nor are you in contention to fall out of the top 4. And that's pretty safe position, which means this week doesn't matter as much unless you're going for seeding. Steve, what do you think of the Aggron season?
The Aggrons have had a fantastic season. It's been a big season for Joey. Historically, middle of the pack, but coming out this time and really continuing the momentum he built last season in the Gym Leader Challenge into this one, and coming out as one of the top contenders. Going into the seeding, there is seeding. It doesn't really matter, but it's just to try and make the schedule balanced. And part of the reason we're seeing some teams do so well is some of the bottom teams, like the number 10 Akron Aggrons, are coming out here and just proving why whatever I try to do is pointless. But yeah, fantastic regular season. Definitely something to be proud of, and we'll see what it turns into in the playoffs. Joey?
Yeah, the season's been great for me. Unfortunately, haven't been able to get over my weakness to the Waterdeep Wobbuffets. I believe haven't beat them at all in the regular season. Didn't change this time either. But aside from that and the loss to Buffalo Bouffalant, who has historically been a very good team, it's been a great season for me.
Absolutely. I guess I do want to ask a little bit more about the team overall since we have you here. I believe your first pick was Tornadus Theory, and that's one of my absolute favorite mons to use. How have you found it overall this season?
I've found it pretty helpful. Normally I just go with a utility set with Knockoff, U-Turn, Defog, and Hurricane, but that fills most of the roles you need from it. It allows me to control items, have momentum, get rid of hazards that could be hazardous for my mons, such as Kiram, and also gives it a strong offensive option. Absolutely
true, yeah. You just list off some of the absolute best moves in the game, which is, I think, another great reason why it's so good and so highly valued. How do you think the rest of your team has been? It seems slightly top-heavy. I see a lot of the top mons being super strong. The Tornadus, Kiram, Sylveon, and now Crocodile you've added to just tip that balance a little bit more. What have you thought about overall the top half of your team and how much maybe that's been playing into your overall strategy? Being able to count on those basically every week.
Yeah, I think that my team definitely has focused on the top half doing the work with some support from a choice bottom mon such as Eldegoss. It doesn't really do much that's showy, but when I bring it, it provides a decent core for switching, can put Pokemon to sleep, and also get some recovery from Leech Seed. And Luxray always makes a solid, well, not great, but a solid physical wall that can have Rocky Helmet to punish contact moves.
Yeah, I think that's something I've been impressed with too. You only need to bring one or two of those bottom mons, but they're there for a purpose every time. You do tend to fulfill that purpose, which has been great. I guess the last thing I got is Arcanine. I think has been maybe your MVP. It's been up there a couple of those weeks, almost carried by itself. I've been very impressed with it. What do you think?
Yeah, this season's definitely improved Arcanine in my eyes. Before the season, didn't really think too much of it. I just thought it was a fire type with some good speed and decent offensive power. But using it a bit more, Morning Sun is great on Arcanine. It also has the option of Reflect, with which all the Intimidators on my team can really help make it extremely physically bulky, even if I don't bring mons that are specifically have a high defense stat.
Very true. Cool to see you experiment with things like that. Kira, I'm going with substitute sets, choice sets, etc. Well-deserved first-round bye for the regular season. I'm eager to see if you can make the next step in the playoffs, but until that point, you have your 2 losses right here in the call with you, so we can call you out as much as we want. Let's move on then to maybe the most interesting part. We've seen 3 of the first-round byes, but the last one is still up for grabs. We, of course, can start with the Route 1 Birbs, who are currently in control of that spot, and it's pretty simple. If they win over the Mighty Miltanks, they get that last spot, because they're too far ahead in differential and record-wise for anyone else to catch up if that happens. If they lose, they also need the Close Combat Club to lose and your Buffalo Bouffalant to lose and to miss out based on differential, but they can still make it with a loss. Maybe a little bit unlikely. And obviously, the most straightforward path, Steve, is just beating the Miltanks. Take care of business.
Definitely. And it's very likely. The Birbs have been a really strong team. And, despite being 4-3, those 3 losses are to the 3 teams ranked above them. Just due to how the seeding and everything worked out, there's been one group that has the Seattle Steamrollers, the Newport Noctowls, the Akron Aggrons. They're all together and don't play each other. The Birbs hanging in there into the top 4, despite playing all these powerhouse teams, really has sealed them as the number 4 in my mind. And, that really leads me to think that they should have an easy time, get a win, and they're in. And, push comes to shove, they can cross their fingers and hope for other matches to go their way. Joey, anything else you'd like to add?
No, you basically covered all the thoughts that I had there.
It's been just a tough schedule for the Birbs. If they've lost all the top teams, I'm curious how the playoffs will turn out for them, especially with the poor luck they've had. Let's see if maybe they can make their own luck and turn things around, yeah? Now let's move on to the other 4-3 team, but with a -4 differential compared to the +4, and that is the Close Combat Club. They've got their first round bye clinched if they can beat the Seattle Steamrollers up at the top of the list and the Route 1 Birbs lose. That would leave them as the only 5-3 team and able to make it in. But that is a very tough opponent. Still relatively straightforward, Steve.
Yeah, real simple path for John. Only has to worry about 2 battles this week. However, both of them are definitely uphill climbs. Facing Chad, going for his undefeated season, is definitely going to be a challenge for John. Huge battle, and we'll definitely see how that one goes. But not only that, but he needs help from the Mighty Miltanks to overcome against the Route 1 Birbs. I'd say both of these battles are likely going the other way, but there's definitely a chance. And John, very much alive and can make plays. It is unfortunate, though, at this point that his fate is purely out of his hand. Joey, anything you would like to add?
John does have powerful options on his team, such as Jirachi, so I think he definitely has a chance, but it comes down to other people, so we'll see how that goes.
That does make for a tough spot, but for those of us that are outside of that top 4, we can still be in it, but if we require other people's help, it's because we had failures earlier in the season. I guess that's kind of the story with our next team, the Buffalo Bouffalant. Yes, at 3-4, I still do have a chance with the 4th highest differential overall, actually, funnily enough, at +5. But I also need some help to get a first round bye. I need to win over the Incineroar, which are the next team we'll talk about, and I need the Route 1 Birbs to lose and the Close Combat Clubs to lose. I got maybe some unlikely scenarios to happen there, but based on differential, that's actually all I need to happen. I don't need to worry about anything else, just the decisions in those matches. Still relatively unlikely. What do you think, Steve?
As talked about with the Close Combat Club, the Miltanks over the Birbs is unlikely, but definitely possible. Same thing, though, with the Seattle Steamrollers. I think they're likely to beat the Close Combat Club. So, one match is favored to go your way, one against. And it just comes down to your match against the Incineroar. Both teams having kind of iffy seasons. The Incineroar have really been struggling this season, but so have the Bouffalant. So it'll be interesting to see how that battle goes. And both of these teams will be playing for their shot at making it. Not even a guarantee, but their shot. So that'll definitely be an interesting battle to watch. Joey, anything else?
Yeah, you just about covered it. It's just going to be a match between the two, see if they get a chance to get into the top 4.
So you're saying there's a chance. That's all we need. Anything can happen from there. And as alluded to, the Cincinnati Incineroar are also 3-4 at -4, and we are going to be playing each other. So what they need for the first round bye is they need a win over the Bouffalant, and they need the Route 1 Birbs to lose, and they need the Close Combat Club to lose, and they also need differential over the Route 1 Birbs if they do lose, and the Boulder Boldores if they do win, which is still a possibility in the last team that we'll go over in a moment. Quite a few factors going on for the Incineroar, mostly because that -4 differential, in order to try and catch up with the Birbs and their +4, it's going to require a decent amount of help, not just with matches going their way, but also differential, Steve.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill battle for the Incineroar. As you've mentioned, the Bouffalant's differential is so high because even on their losses, they were narrow losses, and the wins have, of course, been big wins in general. So it's not looking great for the Incineroar, having to go up against the historically strong Bouffalant and trying to secure a big win while hoping for a big loss from the Birbs. Definitely on the unlikely side. Also add into it that you need to ensure that the Seattle Steamrollers beat the Close Combat Club. Likely, but still something else that could go wrong. And then, of course, there's the wild card of the Boldores in there too. You can't have them take too big of a victory over some crappy bottom of the ladder team like myself. So very difficult path. Lots of things that need to work out, but there's a chance. Joey, anything else?
No, not really. Just quickly looking at the two teams, it doesn't look like there's a strong Pokemon favoring Cincinnati Incineroar versus Bouffalant. So we'll see how the battle goes, but it doesn't look, from a quick glance, likely to give him a big swing.
Yeah, and I know his team is quite top-heavy, so there is always a chance for a big win, for sure, and they will need it if they want that shot. And finally, it's a long shot. It admittedly is a long shot, but the Boulder Boldores still do have a chance at 3-4 and -7. They, in order to get a first round bye in the number 4 seed, need a win over the Waterdeep Wobbuffets, and they need the Route 1 Birbs to lose, and they need the Close Combat Club to lose, and they need the Buffalo Bouffalant to lose. And on top of that, they also need to come out on top in differential over the Route 1 Birbs and the Cincinnati Incineroar. The Incineroar are -4, but they do need to win because if the Bouffalant win, there's no real chance for them to catch up to the Bouffalant differential, so they need the Incineroar win, but only by small margins so they can overtake them, and also need to catch up 11 points of differential to the Route 1 Birbs. There is just a lot going on here.
It is surely stacked against the Boldores. It is an incredibly difficult path for them. Needing a big win, needing big losses, and some other just off the cuff losses and whatnot. It's possible. By all definitions, it is possible, but an insider source is telling me that the Boldores coach, Zasbo, may have given up and requested a meme battle So maybe he's not pursuing it. Joey, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, you mentioned how he needs the big wins and big losses, but personally, I think the narrow win that he needs from Cincinnati Incineroar is going to be one of the tougher parts, requiring him to win by like a 1-0 or 0-0 for his win condition. That's a very narrow range of error.
Not to mention some possible tiebreakers involved. Co-Commissioner, could you please inform us what is up with the tiebreaker?
Right. So, of course, we first go by wins, and then we go by differential, and then we look at the head-to-head. And it was pointed out that, of course, going through this last week, and honestly, it's always been the case, there's always the chance that the head-to-head is needed. And, if we get past that, there's nothing. Oh, I forgot. There's also a total kills. But, hey, that's kind of tied to the plus-minus. So it's possible at the end of it all, we still don't have a tiebreaker. I have executively decided, rather than a coin toss, which is what I would usually defer to at this point, in the spirit of the league, the tiebreaker will be a match of double Hackmons, effectively a coin toss, but with a little bit of skill peppered in. Also, can be fun and exciting. So if we need to, there will be a week 9 with some double Hackmons for tiebreakers. Really looking forward and hoping for it. Also really hoping we don't need to do it, because that, having someone's season, especially for that bye, can you imagine the bye going to a game of double Hackmons? That'd be
awesome.
Absurd.
That'd be great. It's time to flex your skills at double Hackmons, the best format in existence.
Oh my goodness. Well, there's always a chance, isn't there? So let's just wrap things up here with the Week 8 schedule. Looking at the final week, we've already gone over a few of the matches. You see up at the top, Bouffalant, Cincinnati Incineroar. One of these teams gets to finish at 500. The other one, a little disappointing at the end there. Waterdeep Bobcats and Boulder Boldores. An interesting inside source you have there, Steve. I wonder what that could end up being about. CL Steamrollers Close Combat Club, we talked about the heavy implications of that for both ways. Route 1 Birbs and Mighty Miltanks important as well. Akron Aggrons, Summit County Psyducks, maybe a little one that may be a little bit more for pride. And the Newport Noctowls and Zanesville Zigzagoons at the bottom there, with the Noctowls needing a big win to try and keep up. Any highlights from this schedule before we wrap things up?
There are a lot of exciting matches. Some key ones that we've been talking about, the Bouffalant and Incineroar, both playing for a fairly realistic shot and making it in. They kind of need similar win-loss situations. They just both need to win. So that game could be pretty big. Steamrollers, of course, playing for their 8-0. We're going to be really excited to see if Chad can pull off the perfect regular season. And yeah, some of these other teams competing just for the pride at the end. Maybe some people will wait till Sunday for their match and try and figure out the bracket ahead of time and try and get a favorable path through the bracket by winning or losing their match accordingly. It'll be interesting to see how this last week goes. Joey?
Yeah, that is indeed an option. We'll have to see how the other matches go. Maybe put off scheduling Akron Aggrons versus Psyducks till the end. Optimize the bracket for me.
That could be pretty interesting to see what kind of manipulation goes on there. I think ultimately it's going to come down to that Route 1 Birbs versus Mighty Miltanks. If the Birbs go down, that opens up basically everything else. So that's probably the one to keep your eye on to see if maybe things can shuffle up quite a bit there. If the Miltanks pull it off, we got a very exciting rest of the Week 8. So that's going to wrap it up for us. Thank you for joining us, Joey, and we will see you at the end of the regular season. See ya.